Well, it's time for a look at the day's business news now with Kate Moody. Thanks for joining us this morning, Kate. We're going to start with Greece again, which has bought itself some more time to make those payments.
Yeah, exactly. This was a day where Greece could have actually defaulted if it found itself unable to pay the International Monetary Fund the sum that was owed this Friday, the 5th of June, which was about 300 million euros. But Athens has found what you might call a loophole in the system and has said that instead of making 4 individual payments to the IMF this month, it's going to bundle them all together and pay in one lump sum at the end of June. Take a listen to the Finance Minister, Nathalie Savaricas.
Objectively speaking, we have until the 30th of June, because this is when the extension of our loan agreement with our creditors expires. But what has been happening over the last 5 years? We have been, this nation, this country, different governments of course, they have been adding bad debt on existing bad debt, on conditions of austerity that reduce the incomes from which those bad debts will have to be repaid. This is not sensible.
Now, for more on this story, we're joined by our Athens correspondent, Nathalie Savaricas. Nathalie, thanks for coming to talk to us. Now, tell us a little bit more about what the Greek government is actually doing here. How have they managed to dodge what seems to be yet another bullet?
Well, it's basically following in Zambia's footsteps. 3 decades ago, Zambia, the African country, did the similar thing. It owed a lot of money to the IMF and it decided to bundle all its payments to the end of the month. Now, this is what Athens is going to do. The 305 million loan installment that it owed the IMF today and it was due for repayment alongside 3 other installments this month will all be bundled together and repaid on June 30th, or at least that's what Greece says. Now, since this is an option that has existed since the 1970s, where countries had the option to bundle together multiple loan payments, which matured within the month. And this decision was intended to address, if you like, the difficulty of making multiple payments in a short period. So this is an IMF, a very legal option, but of course it's kind of striking since it's seldom used.
So by pushing back these payments, Athens is buying itself more time to come to a deal with its EU creditors. Those negotiations, of course, have been going on for months and they will continue. What are the sticking points at the moment?
Well, listen, I mean, I spoke to a vast number of Syriza officials yesterday, and I think basically the one thing you'll hear throughout the camp is no to more austerity. It's just not working. It's a failed recipe. Greece will never be able to repay its debt like that, nor get its economy working again. Now, speaking to sources late last night, they said that there are 4 sticking points, essentially. One, they essentially agree with the creditors on a low budgetary surplus. The creditors want like 1% for 2015, 2% the next year, etc. Greece is around 0.6% for this year, 1.5% for next year, but they say at least there's some common ground there. Second, they don't want any more new cuts, whether it's in pensions or wages. No to that. Nothing that would contribute to essentially a more impoverished nation and essentially would lessen the income of the Greek coffers as the Greeks are unable to pay their taxation. Third point, restructuring of Greece's public debt. That is a very important point. They've been screaming it at the top of their lungs for years now, but they want it included in the deal. And lastly, they're calling for a strong investment package, something that would help boost the heavily battered economy. They say, of course, that the measures that have been implemented here, and this is something that even IMF officials have admitted to, are just not working. They've contributed to the recession. And of course, with all this, the country will not be able to rebound. Now, the Greek Prime Minister himself will be updating Parliament later today. He'll also be debating. A number of MPs and senior members of government have also asked for elections or a referendum if the creditors insist on this line. But this, talking to other members of Syriza, has not been echoed throughout the party.
Nathalie Savaricas, thank you very much for that update from Athens. Now, those developments in Greece have been weighing on the global markets. Investors are cautious as they wait for some kind of a resolution. We've been seeing a mostly negative picture in Asia. The Shanghai Composite especially volatile in this Friday session. As you can see, it's currently trading quite high up, but we've seen it taking heavy losses earlier on. We'll also be bringing you up to date on how the European markets respond to all this when they open in just under an hour's time.
Well, another thing, Kate, that will be weighing on the markets is, of course, oil prices. OPEC members meeting in Vienna later.
Yeah, those 12 members that make up the OPEC cartel of oil-producing nations will be deciding whether or not to keep oil production at current levels, keeping in mind that oil prices have dropped by more than half since last summer. Now, the group has thought about cutting back supplies in order to drive prices back up. Delana D'Souza has the story.
Despite an excess supply of oil, OPEC will likely maintain its status quo. The cartel's most influential voice, Saudi Arabia, isn't in favor of scaling back production to prop up prices. Analysts say this is part of OPEC's strategy to regain its market share, which currently stands at around 40%. But lower crude prices have resulted in global oil companies reporting losses in revenue, directly impacting investment.
It is estimated that while big companies have cut down expenditure by 10 to 15%, many smaller companies have reduced it by 30 to 40%. And the total expenditure deferred amounts to about staggering $125 billion.
French oil major Total says that while it has reduced levels of investment, big projects are still on track.
We still invest $23–24 billion, which is a large amount of money. So all our big projects are continuing, will be developed. We have a big programs, and there is no reason, in our industry, it's a long-term industry. We need to keep the vision, and so I'm maintaining most of my projects.
Oil prices are currently up after plunging to 6-year lows in January, signaling the Saudi strategy of driving up prices by keeping OPEC's output unchanged has worked.
We'll be following that OPEC meeting for you throughout the day and, of course, the developments in Greece.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. Kate Moody with the business news. More from Kate, of course, later.